So, hi everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in today to our Nevada Money Mentors Intro to Crypto event. We are going to be recording this presentation, and the recording will be posted to our Nevada Money Mentors YouTube channel. So, just in case you miss anything or want to rewatch this presentation, you can head there in the future. So, my name is Dahlia. I'm a peer mentor with Nevada Money Mentors, and I'll be kicking off this event today. Joining me today are Devin Cooley and Dahlia Jones, as well as Amy Nelson, who are all also a part of the Nevada Money Mentors team. Today, we will be diving into the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why of cryptocurrency. Everything that we share today is educational and is not considered investing advice. So please make sure to consult an investing and licensed professional if you have any questions about investing. Also, we are not endorsing any specific cryptocurrencies that we mention during our presentation. So whether this is your first time hearing about crypto or if you already own crypto, stay tuned and we hope that you learned something new today. Feel free to use the chat box to leave some questions or comments, and we will also stay on the line at the end of the presentation in case you have any questions. So moving on to the next slide, we want to know when was the first time you actually heard about cryptocurrency. So you'd be surprised to learn about how long cryptocurrency has been around. But when was the first time you heard about it? Was it a few years ago? Was it a few minutes ago? Go ahead, leave your answers in the chat box. For me personally, I think the first time I heard about cryptocurrency was around 5 years ago when I was in high school, and one of my classmates actually bought some Bitcoin. Hey, Devin, how about you? When was the first time you heard about cryptocurrency?
Yeah, I think similar to a lot of people and yourself, I learned about it about 5 years ago, around November of 2017. That was when there was a big craze in cryptocurrency, one of the first ones that really happened. And so everyone on the news was talking about it. I was in high school, and it really interested me because it was all over the news and people were getting rich, which obviously draws a lot of people in. So I did a lot of research on that and maybe even bought some cryptocurrency myself, which we might get to a little bit later.
Nice, nice. Yeah, it looks like some people in the chat also heard about crypto like 3 to 5 years ago, right when it was starting to get big. So that's interesting. But thanks everyone for chatting. And now I'll actually have Devin take over so that we can dive into the nitty gritty of what cryptocurrency is.
Thank you, Dahlia. And thank you guys for answering in the chat as well. So, even though we hear about cryptocurrency on the news a lot, or at least when the price of them goes up, like we were mentioning before, we usually hear about people's opinions on them, whether they think cryptocurrencies has a big future, or they think it's a joke, or if they think that the price is going to go up, or they think it's going to crumble. A lot of people have their own opinions, right? But we don't typically hear a straightforward answer, the meaning of cryptocurrency or what it really does. So, what is it? Cryptocurrency, in essence, is just digital money. But nowadays, most money is. More and more people today use debit cards, credit cards, and third party payment processors like Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App to utilize their funds. And those funds are usually represented in numbers on a screen, right? So, what makes cryptocurrency so different than these other kind of digital monies? Well, cryptocurrency uses complex coding that encrypts sensitive data. This is known as cryptographic protocols. These protocols are so immensely complicated that it's impossible to counterfeit or duplicate. And in extension to being immune to counterfeiting, the coding function masks the identity of users, making it fully anonymous. Now, Nevada My Mentors and myself don't condone this kind of behavior or this use, but the ability has made cryptocurrency very popular with the black market, actually, and doing illicit activities. And they actually were one of the first adopters of cryptocurrency and using it in their own ways. So another key feature of crypto is its finite supply. A majority of cryptos have finite supply, um, made at their creation. So once all the crypto is discovered via mining, which in this sense isn't, with a pickaxe, it requires computing complex mathematical equations. And after all of them are discovered, there's no way of discovering or creating any more. Okay, so they're completely finite. Much like gold, you can't recreate gold right now. Lastly, one of the biggest draws to crypto is its decentralization. So cryptocurrencies are not governed or manipulated by any one entity. So this makes them completely borderless, which is obviously a huge draw to a lot of people. So now that all that makes sense, now that we figured out what crypto is, let's just take a moment to talk about where it came from. Thank you. So the American cryptographer David Chaum, he actually really invented the foundations of cryptocurrency by inventing what's known as the blinding algorithm or blinding signature in the early 80s. So like we mentioned, it might have been brought up a long time before you might have thought, because we all mentioned 5 years ago, but it really had its origins in the 80s. And this algorithm, the blinding algorithm, was used back then and is still used today to mask the identity of a transaction. So this wasn't the end of David Chaum. So by the end of the 80s, David and fellow crypto enthusiasts attempted to commercialize the crypto concept in the Netherlands with what's known as DigiCash, or that's what it was labeled. And the concept that's really popular in cryptocurrencies, the decentralization of it, was really dismantled early on by the Netherlands banking system, which required DigiCash to only sell to its already established banks. And so this really curtailed the future of cryptocurrency, just because decentralization is such a big part of it. And it didn't initially have to be centralized, but the Netherlands government kind of called foul on that kind of idea and then required them to sell only to the established banks. But later on, DigiCash actually went on to flop in the 1990s after failing to reach an agreement with Microsoft to allow early Windows devices to be purchased with DigiCash. And if that were to go through, the future of cryptocurrencies would have been vastly accelerated, being that this was the 1990s. And so in the States, right, research on digital currency was made in a different direction. Online financial intermediaries like PayPal led the charge in fintech, or financial technologies. That's what fintech is referred to. And can anyone name one of the founders of PayPal who has continuously supported cryptocurrencies? That's kind of a little hint. And I'll take a second to see if anyone is able to answer that question. Let me know if anyone answers it in the chat. Oh, yep. Connor. I actually see that one pop up on the screen. So yeah, Elon Musk. Great call. He is one of the founders of PayPal. And like mentioned before, Elon has shown consistent support for the crypto space, bringing heaps of people buying just through a single tweet. And we'll actually talk about him a little bit later, because this isn't the end of his kind of crypto involvement. Okay, but great call out. Okay, so like I kind of mentioned, the States had a different kind of turn on cryptocurrency, at least back in the 80s, from the Netherlands. So a Florida-based company called eGold gained a good amount of notoriety in the 2000s. And the eGold business structure was set up to where customers would send in their gold, jewelry, coins, and trinkets to the eGold warehouse in Florida. And in return, they would receive an online currency equivalent to the weight of gold that they sent in, so a denomination of gold, which was, a pretty interesting concept. But unfortunately, this actually went under as well after eGold had several legal troubles involving money laundering and online scams, which we also don't condone that either, just a preface. But yeah, they went out of business. So where does crypto go from there, right? Two kind of failures. So it actually came to modern day cryptocurrencies. It all began in 2009 when an anonymous group or individual, only referred to as Satoshi Nakamoto. So no one knows who this alias is, right? But that's what they're labeled as. So they released Bitcoin to the public following a journal or a white paper Satoshi wrote only 1 year prior in 2008. So very interesting. Um, and it steady grew, right? And with Bitcoin's growth and popularity, by 2012, was that only 3 years after creation, Bitcoin was accepted by multiple merchants, such as WordPress, Expedia, and even Microsoft, something that DigiCash actually failed to accomplish back in the mid 90s, right? So great start for Bitcoin. And seeing the success of Bitcoin, uh, endless other unique cryptocurrencies sprang up, right? All having their kind of unique perks behind them, or all having different, or maybe sometimes meaningless uh, purposes, like Dogecoin, which had a lot of hype this year. And that also relates back to Elon Musk, who tweeted about Dogecoin. But actually, Dogecoin was made just as a joke. And that's what at least the founders said. And since 2009, the crypto space has seen a number of bull runs, and that is runs of rising prices and optimism about the space. So they think the prices are going to go up. Um, Unfortunately, all of those have followed by a collapse or at least a plateauing at a certain price, right? So that is really condensed history. There's so much history behind it, but that's a condensed history of cryptocurrency. And I'm sure we all have our own personal history with crypto, or at least know someone who has a history with crypto.
Definitely. And Devin, kind of on that note, here at Nevada Money Mentors, we're curious, have you personally bought cryptocurrency? And if you have, maybe what kind of crypto do you own? And if you don't have any cryptocurrency at the moment, do you know someone who does own crypto? Like, for example, Amy, I think you have a quick story you want to share about someone you know.
Yeah, I was recently talking to some friends over dinner and found out that just a month ago, a good friend of mine, for the first time, decided to purchase some Bitcoin. So he used a system called Coinbase, which I know Devin will refer to at later in the presentation. And he went in and purchased about $8,000 worth of Bitcoin. And when I saw him this past weekend, we were chatting more about it because I told him this presentation was coming up. And he said it was up to $11,000. So in just 1 month's time, he had earned $3,000. Now, when we talked about this story on Monday, however, Devin was quick to tell me that, oh, Bitcoin had just dropped that day. So that 3,000 was no longer 3,000 because of the volatility in the changes of the Bitcoin and what it's worth. But it was pretty fun to talk about it with him and get some more insight, because I have not personally purchased any of it. And he also was able to buy these things called Bitcoin wallets. And they're very heavy pieces of metal that he is going to fund with Bitcoin and then gift it to his family members so that they will now have a piece of Bitcoin themselves. So lots to it. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. And, even though some of us here might not have any cryptocurrency, I'm sure most of us know at least one person who does have crypto because it's uh, gained a lot of popularity in recent times.
Yeah, and just to share my own kind of story in buying cryptocurrency back, referencing back in 2017, right when all the hype was going on, I kind of got sucked into that hype. And I didn't make too much money back in high school, really, but I had enough money and thought enough about it to buy something called Litecoin, which is another cryptocurrency. It's one of the bigger, well-known cryptocurrencies, but I bought it, and I'll be canon with this. I bought it at about $170 per one Litecoin, right? And I guess I got there a little bit early because the price skyrocketed even more to about $360. So I was like, I'm a genius. What can I say? Like, I know the system. But obviously I didn't know the system as much as I thought I did. I was hearing everyone saying to hold, buy and hold. That means that you save it for a long time. He's like, okay, I'll just hold it. Maybe it'll go to 1,000. Who knows? And then all of a sudden, as fast as it went up, it went down. Speaking to the volatility that Amy was mentioning, all the way down to below 170. And I was like, maybe it'll come up sometime. Then got down to $25. So my $170 transaction came down to 20. And then just recently, it came all the way back up So we're looking good right now. Who knows? I bought out actually recently because I just wanted to get my money and go, but I might venture back into the crypto space buying again soon. But thank you. And I'm not sure if anybody else had any stories, but since we are kind of talking about cryptocurrencies, it only makes sense to understand what a normal currency looks like and what makes it work. We hardly ever question how these little pieces of paper or digits on a screen work in our actual economy. In truth, there are three recognized functions of money we use to make them viable. One is called unit of account, which we have on the screen right there. This means that currency must be able to commonly measure a transaction. So think of playing the Price is Right. We are able to relatively value something using the dollar because we know how much a dollar is and how much something of an equivalent value is. So think of it like, for example, you have a carton of milk and a car right next to each other. You could look at the carton of milk and say, hey, that's about $3 to $4. I know that because it's recognized commonly. And then you can see a car and say that car is worth $20,000. And we're able to measure the value that we have on a specific item through the dollar. Okay. And so secondly, we must be able to measure the state of the economy using the currency. Okay. Think of money as sort of a yardstick, and each inch is a dollar. We can measure something using money just as we can using a yardstick, yardstick with length, money with value. Next is money needs to serve as a medium of exchange. So this means money must be widely accepted payment method. So you should be able to go anywhere and pay, lend, or receive with this specific money without any hassle. Okay. For example, another example, if you did a job for me, or if anyone in the chat did a job for me and I paid you guys in Monopoly money, you would probably be pretty upset, right? Because you wouldn't be able to use that money at a store or to buy what you want because it's not a medium of exchange. Just because I give it to you doesn't mean someone else will take it, which really hurts me paying you. So that's why you want to be paid with money, because you could use it somewhere else. And then next, it must be trusted by the sender and receiver of the funds. So the US dollar does this because it's backed by our government. We know that if we get paid through our work with dollars, the government's backing that money, so they know it's worth something. And that's has to do with fiat money, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. And so lastly, the money must be used as a store of value. So all this really needs is the ability to preserve its value throughout time. The US dollar does this relatively well. And I say relatively because throughout time, our money actually loses value due to inflation, which you guys might have heard as a key term on the news as well, just like Bitcoin. And this generally happens when there's an increase in money supply in the economy. This is the reason that in the 60s, I wasn't alive in the 60s, but I've heard milk was worth a nickel. And it's also the same reason why countries like Zimbabwe had bills worth 100 trillion Zimbabwean dollars. A crazy denomination of money. So currently, our economy has been functioning in about a 2 to 3% inflation rate, meaning your money is worth 2 to 3% less each year. Now, there's some times, especially in the 70s, there was something known as hyperinflation, where within each year, maybe the inflation rate was 10%. So imagine getting your paycheck one year and then all that money be worth 10% less the next year. It could be pretty drastic stuff. So around 2 to 3% is a pretty healthy function of the economy. And so hopefully we could keep it that way. And so these three functions of money, even if one of the functions gets thrown out of whack, the currency could be much less viable. So that really begs the question, right? Is cryptocurrency a currency, right? And pardon me while I drink some water. Thank you. So now that we know the functions of money and what they are, let's analyze cryptocurrencies to see if it fits the traditional sense of money. And please note that during this analysis, we're going to be using Bitcoin just because it's really the golden child of cryptocurrencies and it's the most well known. So let's start off with unit of account. So could Bitcoin serve as a measure of the economy? Well, maybe at one point in time, you're able to do this. Maybe figure out the math to find out how the economy is doing at one point using Bitcoin. But generally, you're not really able to reliably do this because of the rapid changes in price, the volatility that we mentioned prior. So it has a hard time using that function. And can you use Bitcoin as a common measure of a transaction? Well, let's think about it. Well, typically, when you're buying something using Bitcoin, it's spoken in terms of fiat money. That is currency that is backed by government, not commodity like gold, right? It's not gold backed, it's backed by the government. So, for example, let's say you're buying something using Bitcoin. You would say this item is worth $40,000, right? Which you could pay in Bitcoin. So they don't say, oh, this car is worth 1.9 Bitcoin, because not many people are going to know off the top of their head, and it could change literally by the second. Secondly, you could just use the eye test. And if you're not familiar with the eye test is just imagining in your own life going to the store and accurately saying the price of an item in terms of Bitcoin. So you might have any troubles there, and think about playing the Price is Right again. Do you think if we were all on stage, right? Do you think you could accurately say how much something was worth in Bitcoin? Yeah, it'd be a little difficult, especially if you don't have, if you didn't check Bitcoin's price within the last 2 days, it could be drastically different than what you might think. So I would say that it's safe to say Bitcoin does not serve as a unit of account. So let's just move on to our second function, medium of exchange. Okay, so now medium of exchange, is Bitcoin a widely accepted method of payment? Well, Bitcoin is actually the most widely accepted cryptocurrency in the world. According to Fundera, is accepted by 2,300 US companies and about 150,000 worldwide. So that's incredible. It is likely that it's likely that you're able to go, it's not likely, sorry, that you're able to go to your local businesses and expect them to accept Bitcoin, let alone know exactly what Bitcoin is. So that could be some trouble, but it still has a ways to go to be accepted by all merchants. I would say that has a lot of headway going towards it, though. A lot of good signs there, especially with a very new thing called BitPay, which is an association with Apple Pay, where merchants could actually use their Apple Pay to instantly transfer their Bitcoin into fiat money to be used at different merchants. And it has yet to see the performance of that, really. But if that were to, go swimmingly, then the medium of exchange aspect of Bitcoin skyrockets. It goes through the moon, because if you're able to use that just through Apple Pay, which a lot of people are familiar with, that's golden for Bitcoin. And is Bitcoin trusted? Is it trusted just for the sender and the receiver? Well, that really depends on who you're asking. Big companies are more likely to adopt Bitcoin because they have enough cash reserves to absorb some risk. But smaller companies would have a harder time doing this. They don't have enough money up front to really mask the volatility that Bitcoin brings up. I told you that we we're going to bring up Elon again, so here it is. Elon Musk, or Elon Musk's electric car company, who he's a CEO for, Tesla actually started accepting Bitcoin as payment for their electric cars, which is huge. That shows trust in Bitcoin, and as well lengthens the acceptance of payment. And they actually, in extension, bought $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. So a crazy amount of Bitcoin. This is a perfect example of big companies accepting cryptocurrency, like the Microsofts. So in conclusion, Bitcoin is looking more and more like a viable medium of exchange, especially with BitPay being adapted, but it has a long way to go to compete with the US dollar, which is accepted practically everywhere. So finally, let's talk about the store of value. Can it serve as a store of value? So before I answer that question, let's look at the graph on the left of the screen, okay? This is a year-to-date graph on the price of Bitcoin. And you may not be able to tell just because the numbers are a little bit small, but Bitcoin was selling at as low as 30,000 within year to date, and it sold as high as 57,000. Okay, so I actually wasn't even able to input this slide or this graphic until today because the likelihood of a massive price change, which you could see the massive drop off, so that did actually happen. So yeah, that's one thing to say, and uh, and so it's safe to say really that Bitcoin doesn't serve as it serves as a relatively volatile store of value. It could be a store of value in speaking, but it's very volatile. And that is not to say that there isn't other cryptos that don't hold their value. Actually, there's a cryptocurrency called USDC, and it's also known as the stablecoin, which stays at the equivalent of the US dollar. So there are some cryptocurrencies that stay consistent with the US dollar, which means it's less volatile than Bitcoin. But does Bitcoin lose value due to inflation? That's the last question we have. Well, due to most cryptos being finite, including Bitcoin, which only has $21 million or 21 million coins ever created, and you know how we mentioned mining, discovering new coins. There is actually no more mining for Bitcoin, at least in the sense of discovering new Bitcoin, because they're all found. All 21 million coins were found. But crypto serves as a great hedge for inflation because of this, because it's finite. Meaning, if you believe that the inflation will rise in the US dollar, right? The normal US dollar inflation will rise, making it less valuable. You can place your money in crypto and it won't lose value, or at least it won't lose value due to inflation. Okay. So all in all, it's hard to conclude whether you could consider Bitcoin as a store of value. It's nowhere near as safe of a bet as the US dollar. But if your risk tolerance is high enough, you may be able to place your money here and maybe get good returns, but expect to see some volatility there.
All right. So looks like Devin went into a lot of great detail into, what is a viable currency and whether or not cryptocurrency falls into those categories. He did a great job of breaking down each one of those characteristics. And in summary, cryptocurrency has changed a lot from its inception. And Devin basically gave us a great snapshot of what it looks like today. But cryptocurrency can still change a lot in the future. So just make sure you keep that in mind, that this is kind of an ongoing journey with cryptocurrency. And if you're planning on buying into cryptocurrency, there are kind of 3 things that you may want to consider before jumping into this. So firstly, there's a difference between speculation and investing. So speculating has to do more with kind of those emotional sides of investing, kind of like the hype that Devin was talking about earlier, where things are up and are looking well. You may, feel pressured to kind of jump into that hype. You feel like you don't want to miss out on it. So you might make, an impulse judgment versus investing, where that can kind of be more of like a long-term situation. You feel like in the long term, maybe cryptocurrency could be positive. So you do some more research and you look into that more, kind of like a level-headed standpoint versus an emotional standpoint. So start there. Next is doing your own research on the topic. You can listen to us and get inspired and educated by some of these things. You could listen to your buddies who are into cryptocurrency. You can listen to other people. But at the end of the day, it's your own finances, right? It's your own choices. And so there's no better way to do this than to educate yourself and to learn and to make your own independent choices on whether or not you want to invest in crypto. And lastly, use your money wisely and responsibly, and don't put up any money that you aren't willing to lose. especially for a lot of us here who are college students, we may not have a lot of money to begin with. So don't be putting all your eggs into one basket. You know, make sure you're diversifying. And if you're going to section off some money into crypto, only put away as much as you'd be okay with losing. If it hasn't been clear throughout this presentation, cryptocurrency is pretty volatile. You know, there's a lot of times where it's going up and up and up, and there's a lot of times where it's going down and down and down. So just like what Devin shared earlier too, with his own experiences with Litecoin, you know, it's a lot of ups and downs there. And so it'd be smart to just put away as much as you'd be okay with losing in cryptocurrency, just to be safe. So those are kind of the main topics of today and what we had to tell you about with cryptocurrency. You know, this is kind of the tail end of our presentation, but stay on the line. We have a lot of good information to share kind of about our program and our upcoming events. And if you have any questions at the end, please make sure you stay on the line and there'll be an opportunity for that. Also, if you want to find out more about cryptocurrency, this is just kind of a list of some of the sources and some of the resources that we have on hand. So, you know, you can refer to these later if you kind of want to take this as a jumping off point.
All right, thank you for that, Dahlia. Just so you guys know, those links are also in the chat. So if you would like to go ahead and, you know, backtrack to the chat and click on some of those links just to find out more information, definitely feel free. So as you can see here, there is a slide here for Edquity. So we want to tell you about that just because it's a really helpful slide. It's a really helpful app, and we want everyone to have the chance to use it. So a little bit about Edquity. Edquity is an app that provides students with resources such as food, housing, and even budgeting. So if you're low on food or you're feeling hungry, you can simply visit the app to find events on campus. So when you go and register for the app, you actually put in the University of Nevada, Reno. And if there are events that are going to be on campus that have free food, it'll actually pull that up for you. As well as it allows you connect with food resources in your area. So if you're not necessarily in the Reno area, maybe you're in California or you're in Vegas and you're taking classes remotely, it also helps you to find food sources near you in your direct area as well, not just in the Reno area. And then it also includes a budgeting section where you can track your monthly income expenses. So if you're kind of thinking to yourself, hey, I kind of want to get into the cryptocurrency game, like Dahlia mentioned, you know, it's very volatile. You only want to put up money that you are, you know, able to lose. So by tracking your income and your expenses, you kind of get a gauge for how much money you can afford to kind of put out there. So upcoming events, this event is actually going to be next Tuesday on March 2nd. It's Spring Clean Your Finances. So I'm sure you guys have noticed that the weather's kind of changing. In some places it might be a little bit warmer. In some places it might seem like winter's never going away, but we all know that March and April are coming up, and those are the months when we think of spring. We think of things blooming. So why not allow your finances to bloom? So we want you to join our presentation next Tuesday to refresh your finances, get rid of those bad spending habits, maybe get a clear start on some of your finance goals for this year. Even though we're 2 months in, it's definitely never too late to go ahead and start on your finance goals. So if you guys want to be a part of that presentation, you want to go ahead and sign up. The link is listed on the flyer. And last but not least, as always, we want you to stay connected with us, most definitely. So if you want to make an appointment with us to talk about your finances, to kind of get a head start on figuring out a budget or anything like that, you can visit our website, unr.edu, Nevada Money Mentors. You can also find out more information about our program. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Currently, for the month of February, we had a Love of Money campaign. If you go on there and you answered this week's question, you have a chance to win some Nevada Money Mentors merch, and we have some pretty cool merch, if I do say so myself. So you can follow us on all our social media and stay connected. We post about any events we're having, any giveaways, things like this. You'll just be sure to stay up to date. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is also Nevada Money Mentors. So whenever we have a presentation like this, maybe you missed our Love of Money presentation earlier this month, or you just want to rewatch this one just to kind of refresh yourself, head over there, and we always have our recordings posted from our presentations for you to review on your own time.